All right, I think we're finally live.
Nice.
All right, guys. So what is going on today? We're gonna just give you guys a first look at the latest update to Wraith that'll be available as an update later today. I'm gonna be going over some of the newer features with my friend Exo, talking about how some of the new features work, and then preparing for the update later after the stream. So I have here the latest update, and we're going to go over some of the new features that we can talk about.
Yeah. Uh,
So, all right. So you should see here up on the stream. I know X was actually going to be watching as we go through some of the features. He has some questions that he can ask, and I'll be going over them.
so right off the bat, I noticed that you renamed the load game button to refresh game. What's that about?
Okay, so some of the confusion that happened in the earlier versions of Wraith that were released for um, several months now. I originally called it load game because it would basically load all the assets that were selected in the menu. So you could get, let's see, a list of models, or a list of animations, or a list of both. And it would do that. You could keep loading the game, and it would keep refreshing the list. Now, in some of the games, the assets can be unloaded or partially loaded. And the problem is that even if you go to a certain spot in the game where you're seeing the model, um, and even if the model is in the list, you can't just export that model because Wraith essentially took a snapshot of it at that current time. So if you want that potentially unloaded model to load, you have to refresh the game to refresh the snapshot to get that new information. And some people were confused on that. So I felt that it was better to rename it to Refresh Game, which will allow people to simply refresh the list, get new assets, take a snapshot of the current game, and go from there. In addition, you don't have to have the game running. Once you open it, it will automatically select the next game in the queue based on what game is running.
All right, yeah, I'm liking that. So, I'm thinking while we're on the surface of interface and all that, I also noticed that the button for managing GDTs is gone. Are we still going to be able to export those?
Right, so unfortunately, a lot of members in the community didn't actually realize that Wraith had this capability built in to build a GDT from a model when it was exported, adding in images and materials as well. So I decided that I would just get rid of the button and I would make it automatic. So you can actually go right in to settings. Under the models tab, you will be able to export a GDT right with the assets. It'll be handled automatically. You can toggle which version of a GDT you want to export, whether it be for World at War, Black Ops, which is also compatible with the same format, or Black Ops 3, which is the newest one. This will be enabled by default, so as soon as you get the update, you won't have to actually do anything unless you want to change the format or whatever.
Okay, yeah. And on exporting, what can you tell me about the formats? I've heard that the quality on those have been increased. Are there going to be more options?
Right, so there was a bug in several versions of Wraith. Since they all use the same sort of technology, the Maya exports were semi-bugged. You couldn't notice it in all the exports, but there were some issues where the bind formats weren't correct, or the weighting would be a little off for the Maya scenes. That has been fixed in the latest version of Wraith, so you can simply re-export the scene, rebind it, and it should have working binds. In addition to that, though, we did add SMD exporting, so you can export directly to an SMD if you're going to be working in like Source Engine or something similar to that, or if you just want to use it to import to Blender. They are compatible with CAnims. In addition to that, while we're on CAnims, both plugins have been updated, and they are required updates to use CAnims exported by this version of Wraith, so you need to be on the latest development version of the Blender plugin or the latest release version of the Maya one to be able to use these animation formats. In addition to CAnims, though, I did add DirectX anim exporting, which is basically the binary format that the older games used for the mod tools. You can export to this format, and import them directly into the game without having to go through Asset Manager. And you can toggle which version of the game you want to export the animation for. Now, obviously, there are some limitations with this format. It doesn't support animations with more bones than the game actually limits. So if you try to export an animation, let's say from Black Ops 3 that had more bones, it won't work because the format just doesn't support that many. You'll have to either modify the animation, modify the scene, or something like that manually. It's not possible to do within the tool itself.
I'm liking it. There's one question I'm really curious about, and I don't think a lot of people are, and that's what games are currently supported in Wraith 4?
Right, so a lot of people have been asking when new games were going to be coming, how long it was going to take for added game support. I know there were ways to export models and animations from some of the games, or even rip them with some third-party tools that existed. However, I have added support for every single Call of Duty from COD 4 on through Modern Warfare Remastered. I know Modern Warfare Remastered and Infinite Warfare were already there. All these settings, I know Ghost was in there before. They're completely supported, same feature set as all the other games. In addition to that was Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3. And then you can configure the legacy settings for Call of Duty World at War and Modern Warfare in the Settings Legacy tab. And once you set the pass, you will now be able to export X models and animations from the mod tools for these games. I know you could export animations before, but I have added model support so you can load them up. As you see here, they just got cached. You can load them up and export any of these files directly from the mod tools themselves.
Nice. All right. So I guess one of the newest features for this was the ability to rebuild effects. Can you explain a bit about what's possible?
Right, so that was one of the new features that I was actually excited about. It was quite an interesting format to look into, so I decided I would take a look and see how feasible it was. I started off, the first release will have support for Black Ops 1's FX. Basically, it's going to be gathering feedback. They are quite complicated. It's not simply read the values, print them back to a file. A lot of data has been moved around, etc., etc. But for now, you will be able to export EFX files from Call of Duty Black Ops 1. These are going to actually show up under the raw files setting, so you will have to have raw files enabled for that to show up. You can simply refresh the game and they will come up as all the assets loaded in the current scene. There's some other detailed information. If you have worked with FXEd in Black Ops 1, you know what some of these properties are, like looping, one-shot, and mission. I am going to say that this is for the more experienced modder, especially right off the bat. It's going to rebuild the animation or FX properties for you, but you have to rebuild the materials, obviously. You have to set everything up. It's not the one-shot thing. It gets the information for you, and you can rebuild it from there. One of the issues with Black Ops 1 is we're missing quite a lot of tech sets, techniques, and so on that were used in the actual game's materials, so you'll have to set some of that stuff up to be able to properly utilize the FX or even view them in FXEd. But you can basically find the FX you want. I know the Gersh device was one that people wanted. I can't show it here as I didn't have enough time to fully rebuild the materials for it, but you can double click on an FX, export it, it will be exported, and I actually have here loaded up in FXEd a sample FX that was just exported with Wraith 4. This one is actually all set up. The materials were already ready to go. The names for the properties aren't saved, so they're just renamed to Wraith, depending on the type, like Wraith Looping Def, One-Shot Def, so on and so forth. You can play the animation, view how it goes. You'll see most of the properties are going to be one-to-one with the source file. We do have some source FX in the game. However, some of them still don't work. We're still missing some material properties, as I said. You can play these FX almost one-to-one with the game. Some of the properties, like the velocity table, rotation, and physics tables, and even color, are going to look semi-different from the source files because of the way they're optimized. it's still going to produce the same effect in FX Ed. It's just going to look different on the curve because everything was merged into one. Like, for example, velocity, you have two different velocity graphs, but in game, it's basically merged into one. So everything's going to be shoved into that first graph, and there won't be any values for the second one. In addition, like some of the effects are going to play through the floor until you adjust where it spawns. The game doesn't need to know where it is in the editor because it's going to spawn wherever you decided to spawn the effects in the game. So you'll have to move it around if you want to actually debug some of them. But I can, as you can see, just clip through the floor and show you how this FX looks in game. This is going to be improved over time. It's just been quite the process getting it to work. And then Black Ops 2 will be available in the future release, probably after Zombie Chronicles releases, which was the goal of this update.
Beautiful.
So I think that's going to just about wrap up this stream. We're going to prep for release, get it ready to go. You'll be able to download it just like before. I'll tweet it out when it's out, so you don't have to keep opening Wraith, closing it, refreshing the site. I'll tweet it out. You guys will be ready to rip assets, and this will be ready for Zombie Chronicles, which releases next weekend, I believe. I believe it's Friday. I'm not too sure, but we will have that ready to go. We'll have the update ready, and you guys can test it out and provide feedback directly on Twitter or on the site, and we'll go from there.
I love it. I'm excited.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming out. We're going to end the stream here, and like I said, get this update ready to go in the next 2 or 3 hours.
Peace.